law in the world. They are so bad that if you criticize the monarchy of Thailand or even the king's daughter. So now, beginning of 20th century, little research has been done on that, but we know that there were a long and bloody struggle, and that even in Thailand school textbook, they don't even mention about it. So today, we will learn more about the story of Isaan and its long history. We will learn about how a group of historians and activists are working really hard to recover Isaan artifacts despite minimal support. We also hope that some of you will be generous in donating or spread the word to support their fundraising campaign. Today, we will hear the voices of Isaan people, such as the director Apichatpong himself, because when you live in such an extremely repressive environment, people like artists, musicians, film directors, they are forced to be extra creative because they need to go around the rule if they want to express more about themselves, right? And for Apichatpong himself, who won the #1 prize at Cannes Film Festival, he had to see some of his own work banned in Thailand. Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to open this unique event about the lost history of Thailand, and I hope that you will go home inspired with some food of thought about our beautiful but suppressed country, Thailand, where democracy is still a dream, but we hope that we make it come true someday. So before we start, may I ask that you all please give a round of applause to everyone who have made this event possible. Mr. Apichatpong, Dr. Mukherjee, from Goldsmiths University, Professor Streckfuss, and the team at the Isaan Record, Professor Harrison from Seoul University, my colleagues at Thai Democracy Advocate UK, the project fundraising team and the event organizer, and everyone from the staff and students at Goldsmiths to our support. Officially started. Next, we will hear Professor Streckfuss to briefly talk about the Isaan Region History Project. Please enjoy and let us know if you have, if you are interested in donating to fundraisers of the history project, or if you have any feedback, let us know. Thank you very much.
All right, can you hear me? All right. So since a lot of you haven't been to the...
Just one moment, is David.
Yes?
Let me turn off the light. How can we do that? Yep, that's good.
You all disappeared.
So maybe a bit lighter, or?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, should I go?
Yes, please.
All right. So just to give you a sense of, I'm working with the Isaan record, and the Isaan record has been trying in different ways to engage local activists and people involved in trying to understand what their situation is better. And it's been a hard time since Thailand's under dictatorship still, even though there's been elections. And so I'll start with something about Isaan. Isaan means the northeast of Thailand. It has no shared history as a region before 1900. It was at that time that Siam, or what became Thailand, renamed the Northeast what they called the Lao lands, or some other words for dependencies, Isaan, which means northeast. It was meant to tell French imperialists where Isaan stood in relationship to Bangkok, to Bangkok's northeast. So it was given to the region by Bangkok. Isaan history at that time was merely understood to be as part of the Thai historical narrative, in which Isaan plays very little role. At the same time, there's this concept called Thainess, and there was a promise: if you become Thai, then you will be treated equally and benefit equally as Thais. But at the same time, local identities, local ethnic identities were discouraged. The Thai word for race was reinterpreted to mean nationality. So if you were a Thai national, then you were Thai ethnic. And this is important in the Northeast, because the Northeast, which makes up a third of the country's population, is mostly Lao, or a kind of Lao, or variations of Lao, like the country across the Mekong. Thailand, in fact, is kind of misnamed, because probably less than 50% of the people in Thailand speak Thai as their mother tongue in their homes. It might better be called Laoland, but that wouldn't make sense within the rubric of Thainess. So from the very beginning, Lao language or other local languages like Khmer or any other minority language was banned from being used in schools. And they were everyone was sort of down, all these languages were downgraded into local dialects. And they were ethnically defined as Thai. So they were no longer Lao or Khmer or Puthai or many of the other minority groups throughout the Northeast. They were invited to shed their local identities and become part of this greater Thai family under the rubric of Thainess. But Thainess was, in the end, a kind of a ruse, a kind of ruse that we find under colonialism. In fact, the Central Thai have maintained a kind of racism hidden within Thainess. Not the kind of racism like in the United States where blacks were separated. This one was inclusive. It kind of gobbled up those local identities and local ethnicities. The people have not been treated equally, and it depends how you can understand that in a lot of different ways. But a World Bank report from 15 years ago, there hasn't been an update on this, shows that while Isaan makes up 34% of the population, it receives only 6% of the government expenditure. That means, just per capita, a person in Bangkok receives 24 times more of government expenditure than a person in the Northeast or Isaan. You know, Isaan is sort of is kind of a policy afterthought or a security problem. It never really had it kind of found its voice until there was the beginning of a kind of democratic government under the 1997 Constitution, which sort of brought Isaan people forward, and they elected a government that brought them up both in terms of recognizing them as a people and also economically. But since then, there's been a series of authoritarian governments and going back and forth between semi-democracy and semi-dictatorship. And of course, under any authoritarian regime, this massive minority is always going to be excluded. But in the last couple years, the new generation has really done a lot here in the Northeast, has really done a lot to help Isaan people as a whole start to rethink who they are, what they are in relationship to this nation. And earlier this year, they set up a network called the People's Network, but it's called under the wording, not Isaan. They said Isaan is a colonial word given by the metropolis, Bangkok. And so we will come up with our own word. And they, within the student group that they're represented by people from many of the different provinces, they didn't choose to call it like Lao, even though it's the largest group. They decided to base it on the geographical features, the Mekong River, the Chi River, and the Moon River, which flow through the Northeast or on the edge of the Northeast. So they named it geographically, but not in relationship to Bangkok. And so it's called the Kong Chi Moon Network. And part of that process, and it's something we noticed in the Isaan record, was people started to respond to these historical articles, like anything that had to do, because all of a sudden people realized there is a we here, like we as Isaan, because mostly everyone is kind of connected to Bangkok and not horizontally to each other. And this new movement has connected people, not with Bangkok, but with each other and sharing their experiences. And so one of the things that's come up, so there's this whole history of the Northeast that kind of got forgotten about the role that Isaan people played in the Northeast or in like national politics, the role that socialists, members of parliament played in the 1940s and 1950s, which have been lost and forgotten. And now people are starting to kind of come around to this, and we've got a lot of interest on these historical articles, anything to do with history. And that brought us around to the Holy Man's Rebellion. And the Holy Man's Rebellion was the first indication of indigenous response to centralization, or, as some people say now, colonialization. The same thing that you might find in Burma or in Indonesia, other colonial regimes at the time. So in the early 20th century, these holy men came to bring together lots of different kinds of people for different circumstances, and didn't want to come under the Siamese or the Thai, partially like a monetized taxation system. And this rebellion spread throughout the Northeast, and was brutally put down. The rebellion also was part of what happened in the north of Thailand, which had a similar rebellion, and in the deep south of Thailand, that also had its rebellion against centralized rule. And so this project is part of what, when the Isaan record went out to talk with community members, there was interest from some older people, not yet younger people, and some academics and others got around, and artists from the Northeast, progressive artists, and they said, you know, there was this, they have some land, they want to create a museum, they want to create something before the memory completely dies from people's lives as people get older, and this is lost within the national narrative. And so there was an effort to try to help find funding to help make this more visible within Isaan, to make it more visible to Bangkok, and to make it more visible as a historical moment within Thailand's history, but more importantly within Isaan history. And so the Isaan record, this new generation of people would like to thank the work of the Thai democracy advocates and Apichatpong for helping in this effort. We hope that you will find ways to help spread this message, and of course help raise funding, but even more importantly, help raise awareness of a kind of growing consciousness that's happening in Thailand that's democratic, egalitarian, and hopefully will help. If Bangkok can't fix the problems, maybe Isaan can become part of a movement that helps bring democracy back to Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our director, Apichatpong himself.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for joining today. And thank you, Isaan Record, and everyone and the staff to make this event possible. I'm really glad to be part of this fundraising mission to record and to dig and to find a new history for the place that I spent most of my childhood in, because actually I cannot say that I know that much about Isaan, because in school, like many of my peers, you know, we only been fed with propagandas and all this, you know, narrative from the central, which is Bangkok. And many of you haven't been to Isaan, and today it's my pleasure to share with you a little glimpse of that, and just a corner, actually, my hometown. Yeah. And for this film, I started to make it right after Uncle Bunmi, who can recall his past life. And we shot in 2014. But the period before that, it was harder and harder to talk about truth in Thailand. There's many factors. The king was ailing, and the powers are shifting, anticipating, you know, and military presence is always there. So you can sense this, some kind of instability and unpredictability. And books were banned, and so I was thinking at that time what to do after Bunmi, and I was thinking about home, the place that I hadn't visited for almost 20 years. And when I went back to Khon Kaen, just thinking of doing something, I realized I haven't stayed that long. I only visited my mom. The things change a lot. But I saw a lot of old things and old memories and the remnants, of places. So I decided to make this film, to dedicate this film as something of a goodbye, like a farewell film to home and also to the country, because I didn't actually see the way out for Thailand at that time. And in Isaan at that time, when you were young, in Isaan there was a word, I think it was from the government, that saying that we live, if you're a kid, you live in this cycle of Ban, Wat, Long Lien. It's home, temple, and school. So for me, this film is also cycle, and I changed a bit to home, hospital, and school. So the film is a combination of these three spaces, literally. I want to mix them in memory together as a farewell letter. Yeah. And I imagine a place that is dominated by sleep or dream, because you cannot really face reality. And when you dream or you sleep, you take refuge in that, and nobody can touch you. Yeah. So we planned that, and actually before the shooting, there's a military coup in May. Yeah. And we shot in, I think, August or September. So during the shooting, there is sense, even more presence of something shaky, and something that, I asked the question a lot, whether there are going to be some news that, the military would do something or someone would die, that prevent our shooting, So this thing is, make, I think it shows in the film this kind of uncertainty and the darkness. Yeah. But anyway, so really it became like my last long film in Thailand. Yeah, at that time. So I think that's all I want to introduce the film. Yeah, now. So thank you again, for coming.
I'll do the Q&A from here, right? Because that way we can see everyone on screen. It's a fantastic opportunity to be able to ask some questions to you. Apichatpong, it's brilliant to have you here. So I'm guessing from the show of hands in the room that there are quite a few people here who don't know about Thailand, and you probably, being at Goldsmiths, you know about film and media, but you haven't been to Thailand. And so it's a bit difficult for you to ask specific questions about the film, not having seen it yet. But I'd like to open the floor to sort of general questions, because I'm sure many of you know Apichatpong's work, even if you haven't been to Thailand, since his reputation goes way beyond the realm of Thai studies. So can I open the floor to Q&A and ask if anyone wants to start the ball rolling? Nobody. Yes, please.
So I have seen many of your films. So hello, Apichatpong, and I think that what I really get from your film is I feel liberating, growing up in Isaan as well. But also it like you said, that memory is one of your central theme of lots of your films. And now you said that you have kind of moved on. Do you think that memory would still be a theme that you would continue working on as a film director in the future, or would you move on to other themes that you are interested in? In other words, do you have other things you have in mind other than the theme about memory that you want to make film about?
Oh, for sure. I feel like there's because memory is so how you say transient, or it's not fixed. It's really malleable, and I feel that by looking or thinking about memory, not only mine but also like the last film of Colombia, is also to find something new in there also, you know, and what we're doing today as well, you know, to look at memory in Isaan, you know, it's to find something new or new to us, and for me, especially coming from Thailand, you know, is really important to really find out who I am, because I think my identity is really based on my education and belief and many other things. But then when you really look at it and listen to other people and study, and then, oh, this is not what I think I, you know, my place is, or what about myself, you know, so this thing change. And then that's a local, but they're also national and then global, I think, memory that we have. So for me, you know, with the experience in Colombia, it's very rich, and it's very revelation that we shared a lot, you know, of belief, and also we share a lot of traumas, suffering. Yeah, so to learn, and it's always, you know, it's my starting point. Yeah, memory. Yeah.
Maybe I can just connect this question up a little bit as well with the kind of events that we're discussing here today, because it seems to me that the question of memory is so crucial in a regime where there's so much at stake in repressing certain memories and certain ways of knowing what it is to be in the space that people are in. And it seems to me as well that art and culture and filmmaking have a tremendously important role to play in being able to encourage people to explore those repressed memories. Does that resonate for you?
Yes, totally. Because I think, you know, that it linked to many things. It linked to your everyday life. You know, I actually have friends who disagree, and then we stop being friends because we're, you know, with this conflict of truth, you know, and also my family members too, you know, we think differently, you know, because we think of, you know, let's say national memory is different, our our idea. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Isaac?
Question. So it's been a decade or so since the red shirt protests. What kind of a state do you believe Thailand is in terms of having a wider cultural awakening?
Well, it's I don't know, because I have many mixed feelings. It's like a person in love, because last year and early this year I was really in love, you know, because of the love of hope that the young generation started, you know, by questioning, you know, and asking for military reform and monarchy reform. Yeah. But then, you know, if you follow the news, it was really, you just, I'm starting to question just this month actually whether it's healthy. It's just going up and down, and then you started to think about the global history and how it's not that easy, and you realize that what the students are doing, it's not really new, you know. You know, it's new in Thailand, but yeah, it's you cannot imagine, you know, to tackle the issue of monarchy. Yeah, but yet when you look at the bigger picture, you think, oh, that's really, really tough. Yeah. So, but somehow it just keep me going, you know, even though I say I'm not making film in Thailand, but still there's some artwork and some activities that I'm still involved. Yeah. And I think it's a very exciting time to be here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions that I want? Yes, please.
Hello, thank you for being here with us. There's a few film students in the room, and so in your films, you speak a lot about very real events and very real contexts, and also dreams. And I know in filmmaking, it's a very hard task to film dreams. How do you approach blending them together and like speaking about the mystical and the reality in the same project?
There, I don't think there's any fixed formula of how, you know. It's just that I'm the one who like dreaming a lot because I many years I have insomnia, and when I dream, that means I sleep, you know. So I'm really treasure those dreams, and I write down, I keep a dream journal. And when you do that, there's a lot of, you know, revelations about the narrative, you know, of dreams and how it seemed to make sense, but not, you know, this in between, you know. And you just switch to certain scenarios, like, you know, really smoothly. And I was fascinated by that because I think cinema and dream is really related, and to the point that I really not looking at movies that much. I'm just enjoying just dreaming. It's a personal movie. Yeah. Yeah, I just did this laboratory talk with, you know, the scientists in France, and it's really interesting. You know, it's really biological. Why we need cinema, why we need to dream is really similar. Yeah.
I have a question. Hello, I have a question more on the technical part. I'm a photographer. So I see in your films a lot of poetry in the images and beautiful work of light and shadow. Do you work with the same DOP, or do you create the lighting yourself, or how are you involved in designing the scenes in that sense, like the location and the lighting?
I mostly try to work with the same cinematographer or DOP, but sometimes it's happened like Symmetry of Splendor, you know, there's a chance to work with the Mexican DOP, Diego Garcia, and he did a wonderful job. And I approach the same, you know, with the image, you know, with him or with my usual Thai DOP, you know, that we keep it very open, the frame, you know, because I want to respect the audience and to respect myself too, to look back and to see a lot of space for you to look. You know, it's not only the characters there, but there's the trees, the architecture, everything is important to me. Yeah. And I try to use minimal lighting. And if there's a lighting, I try to have it as unobtrusive as possible in terms of actors' movement, so that they can move, you know, without, you know, being so conscious about those equipment. Yeah. So and I love the long take, so it's like a performance for each take. So they really have to be in the performance. Yeah. Yeah.
I realize it's getting quite late in Thailand now. It's sort of late evening, and I guess everyone is keen to watch the film with your fantastic introduction to it. So maybe we should begin watching the film now, and really thank both you and Dave for joining us here, because I think it's great to have this kind of background and context. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to the organizers.
Thank you very much.
So we will start the film now.
Okay, enjoy.